The thing that makes spatial justice work so promising for someone interested in liberation is that it's all about how to build the future. Something about what even is a community. I know what my parents thought when they had to move out of their home in search of a safer version of that word, community. Mum dispensed health as she trained in the local pharmacy. Dad grafted in public sector kitchens, learning silver service in exchange for flavor. As immigrants, they apparently couldn't even have a miscarriage without graffiti being scrawled on the walls outside their flat. Something about what happened to your baby. That was Flavour of the Month, 1990. South London's Clapham, oh so common. And sticking with the culinary arts, the first person in the archives I got a shout out is Doon Alexander, founder of Grammars International Limited in 1987. Doon, a spiritual herbalist, publisher, author, motivational speaker, health campaigner, and award-winning business pioneer. Primarily a purveyor of Grammar's herbal sauces, a concentrated spiced condiment she started from the ground up and convinced Harrods and Fortnum and Masons to stock within 3 months of starting her business. It was in all 7 major supermarket chains within 2 years. Despite that meteoric rise, her tale is currently tangled in strugglenomics. Zara's herbal tea, which was claimed to have healed both Doon and the family Labrador's terminal cancer, was pulled by EU regulators and the Advertising Standards Authority. Her subsequent campaign has taken her case around the world, fighting, in her own words, lack of consumer health choice, corporate corruption, and collusion within the regulatory system. The key ingredient in her tea, the African bush willow, remains inaccessible to consumers outside of American big pharma's research departments. The search for the cure for cancer and the curious case of one of Black Britain's most decorated culinary revolutionaries continues. Meanwhile, in the early 90s, my parents were taking their cases to Elephant and Castle. They'd given the riotous energy of SW9 a little swerve and landed in a concrete utopia, the Aylesbury estate, still south, but on the sunnier side of London's Batty Crease, jaunt of Dulwich's Old Boys, the emergent verdancy of groves like Camberwell and Holly, Blenheim and Lyndhurst. It's all looking peachy. There's more Ghanaian mums running daycares, hair salons, and catering companies out of their living rooms than you can shake a tax return at. By 94, mum's in the seasoning game too, whipping up enough jollof in Southwark nurseries and primaries to give celebrity chefs ideas for their next big break. That was the new Labour flavour of the day. South London mums hustling hard while their kids were occupied with state-sponsored cultural programming or the revolution of cable TV. I can only remember us stopping to mourn Diana and Damilola. Tony Blair's maiden speech as PM was given above my youth centre. There'd be no more no-hope areas under a new Labour government, he declared.
I'm particularly pleased, actually, that we've chosen this estate to deliver the first speech that I'm making as Prime Minister.
Before consigning the very concrete on which he stood to the waste bin with a decree to regenerate South London's most infamous estate. Something about what even is a community. When we talk about communities and the associated duties with regards to the demolition of the Aylesbury, we are talking about arguably the most important relocation of Black and brown residents anywhere in the UK. South London has the highest concentration of Black people anywhere in the country. And from its inception as the largest social housing estate in Europe, the Aylesbury became a haven for migrant communities. Despite coverage as Hell's Waiting Room or that infamous stage Channel 4 Ident, my neighbours have become chemical engineers, doctors, poets, and choreographers. What happens to these communities, therefore, matters to every other community like it the length and breadth of this country. Southwark Council understood this when they were told by then Housing and Communities Minister Sajid Javid in 2016 that after nearly 25 years, the first Aylesbury CPO breached Human Rights Convention and the public sector equality duty.
I think it's a bad decision. It's bad for regeneration of council estates. It's bad for home building.
And the private companies hired to conduct subsequent equality impact assessments understood this when acknowledging but failing to address the structural inequalities that have been dispossessing ethnic minorities of their homes in Southwark for the best part of a quarter century. Something about collective mourning in immigrant communities for Diana and Damilola. Something about a metaphoric proximity to otherness in the former, and in the latter, a distance from good survival odds. Damilola was just walking home from Peckham Library.
Twice upon a time, there was a boy who died and lived happily ever after, but that's another chapter.
In 1999, I was given what the Royal Opera House and the Royal Ballet called a chance to dance. Lessons took place at Peckham Leisure Centre. Remember we talked about funding for 90s cultural programming? I could walk there via the old Grand Surrey Canal path, or what would have been South London's Regent's Canal if there'd been a middle class to fight to save it when they filled it in from Old Kent Road through Burgess Park to Camberwell and Peckham. But more times I got the bus past Ammy's school, Oliver Goldsmith's, and my older sister would wait for me across Civic Square in the new library, doing, well, I should probably just ask her.
Oh my god, I don't want to go back there, Tony. I just used to stay in the library and read Mills and Boon, large print. I used to try and hide the books between like science fiction or books on nature so that the librarians wouldn't judge me too much. And I'd get a stack of like 9 high and just race through them, and I just remember waiting for the tall, dark and handsome person, not really understanding that they meant like dark haired white person who happens to be tall and not like brown skin kings. You know, on a serious note, it's actually very detrimental for a teen to be reading these books. The expectations based on false ideals is just too much. It's so damaging. Being born of a generation who don't really speak much about love and what actually keeps relationships going. The real deal, the importance of like communication over gifting, for instance, or like being whisked away to Paris by an Arab prince, or, you know, crap like that.
Something about a metaphoric proximity to otherness. Something about a metaphoric distance from good survival odds. The next rude boy de la negritude in the archives is Albert Williamson Taylor, Bethnal Green born, but raised on the road, as his dad was one of the early itinerant architects who travelled West Africa for various projects before settling in the UK and becoming a surveyor. Once Albert reached higher education at Bradford Uni, he had to choose between his love of Taekwondo and engineering. The latter won out, but not before my brother held down the title of English and British champion for 5 years. After achieving chartered status as a construction and structural engineer, in 1995, Williamson Taylor became a founding partner in the practice of Adams Cara Taylor, a multicultural firm of consulting civil and structural engineers, and their projects list between then and now is a roll call of iconic projects. East Beach Cafe Littlehampton, Twist in Oslo, 9 buildings in the regeneration of King's Cross, the Seed Cathedral in Shanghai, and even the on-again, off-again new cathedral in Accra with Ajay Associates. But the project that struck a chord as I leaf through these pages was the 1999 eccentrically cantilevered space, which when completed would have impressive views of London on top and create a plaza and central hub for the local community below. It won numerous prizes, including the 2000 Reba Sterling Prize, but of course, it's been significant for far more important local personal reasons. In an industry that has such profound legacies and shapes the ways we live and intend to live, I welcome the whirlwind of debate architectural workers and the broader built environment sector are currently experiencing around how the industry works, and more importantly, how it reflects the communities their work impacts. The Royal Institute of British Architects recently saw a grassroots campaign elect Muyiwa Oki as the first ever Black president of the global institution. And on the back of the news that Kimberly Dowdall has been elected the first Black female president of the American Institute of Architects, followers of the field are braced for a new world order, in the West at least, as African and diaspora leaders continue redesigning the world we live in. That was a really meandering little collage. I was supposed to connect portraits from across the lifespan of the National Portrait Gallery in this piece. Yet here I am, lingering on two quite contemporary pioneers in the Black British community. Oh well, maybe they'll invite me back for another episode. Meanwhile, let's put this box of Black excellence back until next year.